Jeff, it looked like you were trying to break in the side door over there. I was about to call the cops. Thanks.
Microphone, Councillor Doe.
Don't want that, do we? I'll try again. Call to order this meeting of the City of Powell River regular council meeting for Thursday, June 18th, 2026. And acknowledge that we were meeting on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin people who have been here for many thousands of years. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda. Seconder, Councillor Southcott. Any discussion on the agenda? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next item would be a motion to close the meeting to the public. Somebody like to read it?
I move that council close meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under 1E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. And Section 90, Part 2, B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations, I, between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party. And 2, between the municipality, another local government, or between a local government, another local government, and a third party.
Thank you. Councillor Alameda seconds that. Any discussion on the closed meeting motion? Don't see any. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carried unanimously again. We shall reconvene at the same place at 7 p.m. over to put mine down so people can hear me talk. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's a city council meeting for the city of Powell River for June the 18th, 2026. I've already done a territorial acknowledgement earlier in the meeting before our closed meeting. There's one item I'd like to deal with. I've talked to the corporate officer about it, and our delegation has brought a presentation to make, but they didn't provide it according to the rules before the meeting. They've just brought it now. So would council like to see that presentation? Everybody click thumbs up. Okay, I just want to make it clear that we do have a rule that we have the presentations beforehand, and not our usual process, but here we go. Right now, we are at the public input period. We've got an opportunity for the public to make comments on legislative matters, committee recommendations, or new business, and there's quite a bit of that on today's agenda. So has anybody got any public comments before we start the rest? Anybody online with any comments? Don't see any. So we'll go to our delegation, 8.1, and the delegation is Jennifer Houghton, Boundary Forest Watershed Stewardship Society, regarding the proposed new Forest Act and its implications for the public and private forest lands and community watersheds. So.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jennifer Houghton, and I'm the campaign director for the New Forest Act initiative through the Boundary Forest Watershed Stewardship Society. The New Forest Act is a citizen-developed legislative proposal that has been under development for several years, with input from foresters, scientists, rural residents, and people from communities across British Columbia. Tonight, I am not here to discuss a specific cut block or a license. I'm here to discuss the larger forestry system that governs British Columbia, how it affects communities, and a proposal for what could replace it. And I'll keep my remarks brief by focusing on 3 questions. What problem is the proposal trying to solve? What is the New Forest Act? And why it might matter to communities like Powell River. So this graph tracks both allowable cut, which is the red line, and actual cut, which is the gray line, over time in British Columbia from 2001 up to the end of 2025. And what matters here is not simply that the numbers move up or down, it's that the actual harvest, again, that gray line, has been trending downward while the land base becomes increasingly constrained. And as harvest levels decline, the effects don't stay in the woods. They show up in mill closures, job losses, reduced economic activity, and growing uncertainty for forestry-dependent communities. The question becomes, what kind of forestry system is viable under those conditions? The New Forest Act begins from the premise that answering that question requires looking at the structure of the system itself. Because the New Forest Act starts with the belief that the forestry crisis in BC is structural. Public forests are currently organized through tenure, timber supply targets, allowable annual cut assumptions, professional reliance, and legislation built around keeping wood moving to industry at volume. That structure puts timber flow at the center, and everything else is managed around it. If the structure remains the same, the outcomes tend to remain the same. The structural problems eventually require structural solutions, and that's why the New Forest Act is a replacement framework rather than a policy adjustment. So what exactly is that replacement framework? The New Forest Act is a legislative framework, not a policy recommendation, a report, or a list of suggestions. It's a proposed replacement system. The framework includes governance, legislation, transition, and operational structures designed to work together as a complete system. It is designed to maintain a working forest while placing ecological limits, public accountability, and long-term community stability at the center of decision-making. Of course, in a 5-minute council presentation, I can only provide a very high-level overview. So for anyone who would like to explore the proposal in greater detail, we're holding a public presentation here in Powell River tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. at the United Church. The public presentation runs about 45 minutes and goes through the rationale, governance structure, transition framework, and operational details of the proposal in much more depth. And you're very welcome to attend. For communities like Powell River, the proposal is ultimately about whether a different forestry framework could create a greater long-term stability than the one we have today. And I'll conclude with this. The New Forest Act is built around 3 ideas: ecological integrity, community-based decision-making, and long-term regional stability. Communities across BC are increasingly asking what comes next for forestry, and the New Forest Act is one attempt to answer that question. So whether people ultimately support it or not, I believe that conversation is necessary. If you're unable to attend tomorrow night, you can explore the proposal further by downloading it from our website. In addition to the full proposal and backgrounder, there's also the 3-page executive summary that I believe was provided for you tonight. And with that, I'm happy to open it up for questions.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Acting Worship. So my question has to do with whether you're planning to have it brought forward to the BC legislature through a particular sponsor, or what's the process you're hoping to follow?
So right now it's in the state of a framework. It's not a drafted bill at this point. So this is a long-term project. It's going to take us some time to get to the point where it becomes politically viable for a politician to take it up, an MLA to take it up, and for it to be taken into the legislature. So again, it's just long-term. We're building public support. We have a public education program. We're talking to decision makers in the BC government, and we're also talking to MLAs. So that's further on down the road, the point where it gets to a bill.
So you're doing some sort of a grassroots education and hoping to get support so that it gets there eventually?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Your Acting Worship, and thank you for presenting. This is a forestry town. It's always been a forestry town. It's a forestry town without its industry, except there is still harvesting here, and that's been huge for many years. So huge concern locally. My question is your work based on existing models or evidence, like, for example, in Europe? And the reason why I ask this is because I'm aware that European forestry much of it has gone through more generations than North America, and particularly British Columbia. And there's been suggestion that I've been aware of that we can look at models like that. And I'm just wondering if your work here comes from some of that kind of work, or can you give us a little bit more of a sense of how it came to be what you're presenting?
So the actual the forest management methodology is based in something called nature-directed stewardship, which was developed by a forest ecologist who's based in BC. His name is Herb Hammond. And that has a lot of similarities with the actual sort of ecosystem function type forestry that's being done in Europe right now. So the actual methodologies on the ground that focus on ecosystem function are similar to what's being done in Europe, but I'm not familiar with or aware of any framework that places that forest management methodology into a governance structure like we have. So this is a full package. So it's decision-making structure, restructuring the government, the ministry, and all the way down to community-based decision-making. And I'm not aware that that full system is functioning anywhere in Europe. It's possible it is.
Thank you.
Councillor Palm, you're looking like you'd like to say something.
I may as well, Chair, ask the question on my mind, and thank you for coming in today and sharing your information. I'll have to take a look at your website further to sort things out. But on the road, long ways down the road, what is your ultimate goal as to your objectives?
So there's sort of two pathways here. So there's the ultimate goal of the campaign, the New Forest Act campaign, which is getting this turned into a bill and having it approved in the legislature. And then the ultimate goal on the ground are those three key priorities that can kind of sum it up. That forest management focuses and prioritizes ecosystem integrity and ecosystem function, that it prioritizes community-based decision-making as opposed to the centralized decision-making that's going on right now with forest management, and that it reprioritizes local economies. So, the corporate tenure system tends to be the focus now in BC forestry. It's based on exports in a big way. So one of our key priorities is reestablishing small and medium-sized local mills, local processing, redeveloping or developing regional log sort yards, which will create an open market for logs in BC, and getting small and medium-sized businesses operating again, including mills.
Sure, and that sounds like an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, well, thanks for coming and making your presentation tonight. And good
All right.
luck.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you tomorrow night.
That brings us to the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from our one-person, one-piece consent agenda? See any? Would somebody like to move the consent agenda? Have a seconder, Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. No items removed from the consent agenda. We're down to legislative matters. We've got 11.1, the unappropriated accumulated general surplus reserve fund transfer and repealing bylaws, CFO. Did you have some input on that?
Through the acting mayor, no new report. It's just ready for adoption.
Somebody ready to make that motion? Councillor Elliott? Not Councillor Elliott, Councillor Isaacs.
Oh, you did call him Councillor Elliott, though.
Think about you and looking the other way.
I move that reserve fund transfer bylaw 2814/2026 be adopted. And I see a semicolon. Can I continue? I know sometimes you have to separate them. And that reserve fund repealing bylaw 2815/2026 be adopted.
Councillor Alameda, all those, any discussion on that before we go on to the vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. And Councillor Elliott.
I just thought for the benefit of the people that may not know what that bylaw is, we created different reserves and took the larger list of them and amalgamate them into different reserves, and these bylaws do the work to create the system for fewer reserves and amalgamation, and that's what it does.
Thank you. Next item is the 5-year financial plan bylaw 2751-2025 amendment bylaw 2820-2026. DFO, yeah.
Thank you through the acting mayor. The exact same thing. It's just ready for adoption. No new information at this time. It's the amendment of the 2025 to 2029. So it's just matching up what happened last year in our financial statements with actuals.
Okay. Councillor Alameda.
I move that the City of Powell River 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw 2751-2025 amendment bylaw 2820-2026 be adopted.
Seconder, Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? You want to fill us in on what we're voting on?
Yeah, just as the CFO stated, over the course of the year, we make amendments and adjustments to the budget when different things come across our desk. And at the end of the year, we have to summarize them all and fix up the 5-year plan. And this is what this does.
See any other hands? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. We get to 11.3, the election and assent voting bylaw. Corporate officer, have any comments?
No, Chair. No further comments from last presentation.
Okay. Councillor Alameda.
Move the election and assent voting bylaw 2821-2026 be adopted.
Seconder, Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. We discussed this quite a bit at the previous council meeting when we gave first, second, and third readings. I highly recommend that the public read the report from June 4th that's listed in the agenda here. It outlines things related to early voting and voting dates, but also some key changes. For example, using a voter list instead of same-day registration. It will still allow people to register to vote on the same day, but it will make the voting process faster by staff being able to rely on the provincial voters list. So a very good, thorough report, and it's worth public and media reviewing those details and sharing them. Thank you.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. 11.4 is the 2025 Statement of Financial Information. Senior Manager of Financial Services, and you look eager to give us some information.
Yeah, why not, eh?
We appreciate that.
Well, good evening. So the purpose of this report is to obtain council's approval for submission of the city's 2025 Statement of Financial Information to the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs. The Financial Information Act requires every municipality in BC to submit a Statement of Financial Information, which is commonly known as the SOFI report, to the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs by June 30th of each year. Council and the Chief Financial Officer must approve the SOFI report before it is submitted. So the SOFI report contains information such as the schedule of remuneration and expenses, which lists all of council's remuneration and expenses, as well as employees who earned $75,000 or more during the year. The employee expenses include items such as training and professional dues that are specific to the employees. Another schedule is the schedule of suppliers of goods and services, which lists suppliers who are paid over $25,000 by the city during the year. And there's also the 2025 audited consolidated financial statements, which council has previously approved. So it's worth noting that the financial statements are different in presentation than the SOFI report. The financial statements are presented in accordance with public sector accounting standards, which is based on accrual accounting, whereas the SOFI report is in accordance with financial information regulations and follows a cash basis of accounting. So there's some differences between the reports. But yeah, thank you. Are there any comments or questions?
Any comments or questions first? Somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Isaacson.
Move that the City of Powell River's 2025 Statement of Financial Information be approved for submission to the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs, and that Acting Mayor and Chief Financial Officer be authorized to sign the Statement of Financial Information approval form.
You have a seconder, Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. Then we come to the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 2818-2026.
Evening, Council. This report before you is to provide you with an opportunity to consider first three readings of bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 2818. Back in February of 2025, staff presented on the benefits of moving in this direction under the Bylaw Notice Enforcement Act and regulation, and the benefits that accrued under that system. Council authorized staff to proceed, and in April of that year, we received approval from the ministry to proceed under that act and to be, so we're now under the regulation. And council directed staff to bring back a bylaw for consideration. Over the past year, staff have been doing their due diligence on comparative dispute adjudication registries, bylaws, methods for setting up the bylaw notice enforcement regime. And as part of that, those steps included the proposed bylaw itself that you see within the package, an administrative screening officer policy and forms, bylaw notice ticket forms, notification letters, templates for enforcement and collection tracking, draft communication materials for the city's website, and attached as Appendix B to this report is an index of all of the documents that have been developed or are in process. Staff also had discussions with the City of Nanaimo in respect of joining their dispute adjudication registry system. Ultimately, those talks were not fruitful. Nanaimo decided that they did not want to add any further to their registry. So staff had exploratory discussions with local governments in the Comox Valley and the lower Sunshine Coast. But in each case, the local governments in those jurisdictions had already set up their own dispute adjudication registry system and were not interested in joining a joint system. They were helpful, however, in sharing what kind of resources are required in order to operate the systems, and the volume of disputes that they had to deal with was very light, and the staff resources required were very minimal. And that was a pretty consistent message that I got from all of the staff that I talked to in the other jurisdictions. As a result, city staff have pulled together all the requirements necessary to establish our own dispute adjudication registry, or DARS for short. And apart from the initial startup time and training, we expect that this will be well within staff's operational parameters. The advantages and benefits of the system were canvassed in February of 2025 and include statutory authority for local governments to issue tickets with penalties up to $500, resolve ticket disputes locally and in a timely manner, simplifies and expedites the dispute process by removing straightforward bylaw contraventions from the provincial court system, reduces costs for all parties typically associated with going to court, includes a systematic means for staff members to act as a resource to help residents understand the city's regulations and their compliance obligations, as well as their options for dealing with bylaw notices, and that's through the screening officer function. It provides additional flexibility through compliance agreements where appropriate. And there's a draft compliance agreement attached as Appendix D. And it allows for dispute resolution through an independent provincially appointed adjudicator. The Act and the regulation provide the ability to streamline the enforcement process for bylaws and provide an effective and efficient tool for bylaw enforcement. We will still have the municipal ticket information bylaw, and the city has the option to enforce under the Offence Act or the community charter or through civil proceedings if the BC Supreme Court if necessary. And these options are all aligned with Council's recently adopted bylaw enforcement policy. As far as communications and engagement, communication materials will still need to be fully developed. We've commenced that process. And there are 2 public-facing pieces attached to the materials, a process flowchart and an FAQ document have been attached as Appendix E and F, respectively. As for financial implications, as indicated, other than the minor startup costs for printing and of new bylaw notices, and some minor operational costs with respect to any disputes that need to be processed through the registry. These costs are more than offset by the comparative savings in the efficiency of this system and not having to go to court. And that's about it. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you for this. So in a nutshell, this is essentially internal system streamlining for greater efficiency. Is that essentially what this will achieve?
Through the chair, yeah, you could look at it that way. It's keeping the processing of tickets and disputes the opportunity to be heard by those who disagree with the ticket that they've received, to have that process done on a more local administrative type level. So it saves everybody a lot of cost. It can be done a lot quicker, and it keeps these kinds of things out of our court system.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacs.
Thank you. I need my memory refreshed a little bit here. The fines that are currently included in Appendix is in Schedule A, is it? The different fines. Are those fines currently charged, but we have an inefficient system to charge them? Or are these putting into effect and providing clarity to what charges would be charged?
Through the chair, some of those penalty amounts are already included in the MTI bylaw, the Municipal Ticketing Information Bylaw. And so we borrowed some of those amounts and for consistency, trying to keep things the same. Other than this system provides for penalties, a straight penalty amount, and provides for a discount amount if you pay within 14 days, and a surcharge amount if you pay later than 28 days. So you just pay the regular penalty amount if you're between 14 and 28 days, and the opportunity to get a discount or be further surcharged. For those, for all of the bylaws that are covered by this bylaw, we did go through all of the provisions painstakingly and noted where, there were prohibitions or restrictions, thou shalt not or thou shall, and essentially created infractions. So if you didn't do what the bylaw required you to do, there's a penalty for that. And if you, etc., I think is in a nutshell.
Can I follow up clarifying question? I think I'm still not clear. I think I'm still fundamentally not clear on the purpose of this. Is it about, does this imbue new powers to staff, or is this about creating the registry? I'm still not fundamentally clear on that.
Through the chair, it's essentially an entire system of bylaw enforcement through a means which is alternative to those that we currently have at our disposal. So right now, if we hand out a ticket under the municipal ticket information bylaw, if someone disputes that, we're going to court to deal with that dispute if they take it all the way. Similarly with the other infraction tickets that we have, those are processed under the Offence Act, so they have to go to court. It's a slow, laborious, costly process. The idea, of course, is not to have to ticket anybody or go to court or proceed through a dispute adjudication system, but you need to have the stick as well as the carrot. And so this is a system that's been adopted by, I think it's about 140 different local governments in the province, and unanimously, I think across the board, is viewed as something that is highly effective and efficient for staff in terms of having another tool to enforce bylaws.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott, you had a question.
I do. Thank you. Through the chair. My question has to do with the flow chart and the adjudication. The flow chart is in Appendix E, and I was reading through the bylaw wording. Do we currently have a adjudication hearing processes, or is that new to us?
That will be new through the chair.
And so are we requiring different or more resources to have an adjudication processor, or is it handled by our already existing people?
Through the chair, this will be something that is within the operational capacity of the administrative staff now.
Okay.
There's a process that we implement in terms of dealing with disputes for tickets that's set out in the bylaw, and there will be additional administrative policies to supplement what's in the bylaw and to support it, especially with respect to the screening officer function, as well as policies for the operations and procedures necessary to operate the registry. So to implement this system, you have to have a registry because you have to provide a means by which people can dispute, disagree with it. So the difference is that, you know, they've always had that, but it would cost them a lot of money to go to court and time, and us as well. So this is an alternative dispute resolution system altogether that accompanies the ability as well to enforce through different ticket regime than what we have in place now.
Right. And so then this part that says pay a $25 fee and confirm your dispute hearing, if a person does that and it's adjudicated and they win their case, does it still cost them the $25, or are they reimbursed that $25?
No, they get the $25 back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. I'm wondering, the bylaw enforcement policy that we recently passed, item 9 talks about voluntary compliance first, and I'm unclear with the flow chart. It talks about, you know, bylaw notice received, and so I'm unclear when the process goes straight to that versus trying to get voluntary compliance first.
Thank you for the question. Through the acting mayor, the flow chart and the system itself, the act of writing a ticket to somebody to seek, it should follow, firstly, where there's an opportunity, voluntary compliance, whether it requires additional education and awareness. We're seeking compliance. Where we're not getting compliance, we need to have a method for enforcing our bylaws. This is an efficient method, which is an alternative to what we currently have in place.
So to follow up, the flow chart then speaks to the flow chart that involves this new system, this technology, this what is it called? The DARS, like a registry system. But even before that system begins, that voluntary compliance isn't listed in here because voluntary compliance isn't a technological or administrative step in this system. I guess because I don't see it talked about here, I'm concerned that this means I'm not sure where there's clarity for staff and the ability to still still do voluntary compliance. And so I think all of my questions tonight are maybe I'm confusing two things. And this report is very much about a system, but I'm gone where the fact that voluntary compliance isn't mentioned in this report at all. So if you can alleviate my concerns, that would be great.
To the chair, the aspect of voluntary compliance is part of our bylaw enforcement policy. So this doesn't change anything about our bylaw enforcement policy. That policy sets out how we will go about enforcing our bylaws with a focus to first seek voluntary compliance, provide education awareness, take people's circumstances into account, all those things that you looked at and talked about when you passed it. It also includes in that policy some of the different options for enforcement which exist, which I touched on. Those still exist. So this is really something, ticketing somebody and then providing an opportunity for them to dispute that ticket after you've had to seek voluntary compliance and didn't get anywhere. This is using one of the sticks in our arsenal. It's just another stick.
If I can squeeze my comment in at the end here and not create anything else, but I think the option for voluntary compliance happens when the bylaw officer comes along and said, "Hey, your chickens are making too much noise," and somebody agrees and they say, "Yeah, I'll quiet my chickens down." They go away. There's no ticket required, no further action. That's where the voluntary compliance happens. Voluntary compliance doesn't happen. Somebody has a ticket written, and then you go through the whole question of how do you challenge a ticket, and that's where the flow charts come in. Am I correct on that?
That's correct, Chair.
I think we're looking from the beginning, the first interaction between a bylaw officer and the person who's complained about is that opportunity for voluntary compliance. And historically, I think it works now, the large percentage of the time. Anybody else with any comments? I just want to say that this is first, when we get a motion, I guess it would be first, second, and third reading, and the bill will be coming back to a future meeting for adoption. Give everybody time for a sober second thought. So would somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Almeida?
I move that bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 2818, 2026 be read a first, second, and third time.
Second. Councillor Southcott, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Just another question before we move forward with comments. I was looking at the fees and they all seem the same for a variety of different things. My question was if a situation fits more than one category, will fees be charged in two or three different categories and end up with a bigger fine? For example, if you have an unlicensed dog at large, is it both of those or one of those? And then if your dog's tag is not on because a collar fell off or whatever, that's the same fine as having a dog not licensed at all, or maybe an unlicensed dog is also a license without a tag. I'm not really sure.
Thank you for the question. This doesn't really change a lot of those things that are already available to bylaw enforcement officers under the animal control bylaw and the MTI ticketing process. So they already have the ability to choose what
or put more than one.
That would be
That's my question.
fairly rare. That I think that theoretically that's possible to charge somebody with more than one offense.
Okay.
That's basically possible in a lot of different things. In criminal law, you can be charged with 2 different offenses that arise out of the same circumstances.
I know, I saw that.
Similarly, somebody could be charged with more than one. You could probably find a couple of different things in most circumstances under which the bylaw officer could choose to enforce. And that's where they are looking at the circumstances of the situation, determining, is this something that, we've come back to the same place 3 times now in the past month, and this person's still not complying or taking corrective steps, then maybe what they get is a stiffer provision that they get the ticket under, instead of, the $50 ticket for lack of a license, whatever. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on the amount.
It's 100, but carry on.
But, instead they get the more exorbitant ticket for $100 because of, their failure to comply with previous warnings and so forth. So it provides, provides the bylaw enforcement officers with some discretion in terms of what provisions they're going to enforce under, depending on the circumstances. And in exercising that discretion, they will be guided by the bylaw enforcement policy. So they will be looking at all those things that we looked at when you looked over that policy and ultimately approved it. So.
Okay, so there's nothing to prevent more than one offense being charged at the same time, but it's not something that's commonly done.
Through the chair, I think probably the more common occurrence would be that if you have someone who is simply not making any effort whatsoever to comply, and we're getting a lot of complaints about it, and they're really being obstinate about the situation, then perhaps the more likely thing would be they'd get a ticket every week for the same thing. Every day that you're still doing the thing that's prohibited, then it's another contravention of the bylaw. So you can be ticketed again and again and again. But at some point, you have to consider alternatives if that's the path you're going down. And those alternatives could be any of the other methodologies for bylaw enforcement that I've mentioned, or they could be other methods of dispute resolution that we haven't yet developed, but which Councillor Isaacson referred to at the previous meeting. So there's a wide variety of options available, and this is just another tool in the toolkit for the bylaw enforcement officers, and one which is quite effective and efficient.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Councillor Isaacson, you have something?
Yeah, another question. I'm still hung up a little bit about, when it goes over from voluntary compliance to this ticketing system, because what I'm imagining is having, like, if there is that neighborly dispute where it's really not about the bylaw, you just have a petty neighbor that doesn't like you, and it just starts to add up. And I would hate to be in a situation where someone, as a result of bad feelings between neighbors, someone just ends up owing a lot of money. And I'm not convinced that this system include, like, the connection between voluntary compliance and the system does that. And so I'm hoping for you to convince me otherwise and make me feel better about that.
Through the chair, I think that what we're talking about here is something that occurs after efforts at voluntary compliance have failed. And so this does not prevent or inhibit in any way the opportunity for bylaw enforcement officers to get to the root of something and try to determine what's really at issue and try to resolve it as between, if it's a neighbor dispute kind of thing. So this is, like any of the bylaws that we currently enforce under the municipal ticket information bylaw, it's the same thing, really, except this is a lot more efficient.
Okay, I don't think we've actually moved the motion yet. Good, okay. Let's call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Corporate Officer.
Thank you.
Next item, 11.6, is the Powell River South Harbor Authority Head Lease, Director of Infrastructure.
Yes, I didn't put together a presentation for this one. It's pretty much a straightforward existing lease reformatted by DFO between DFO and the South Harbor Authority, which is the city. This is to continue our role as operators and maintainers of the South Harbor, while DFO continues to maintain the structure, capital costs, and major considerations out there.
Anybody have any questions? Somebody like to make the motion? Councillor Elliott.
Just that, is the arrangement working? Do we like it? Is there things that need to be discussed to renegotiate at all? Or is the recommendation then that everything we're doing so far is working?
Yes. Essentially, things are pretty much status quo. There's no more money for any major repairs out there offered by the DFO. We are looking at our other improvements to improving the function and maintenance of that facility and facilities around it.
So even though prices of everything have gone up, their contribution has not. Is there room to move that at all?
I can't answer that question.
I guess what I'm saying is it could be modernized at some point, and if we just keep renewing the lease as is, maybe we miss an opportunity. But that was kind of where I was going with that question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and we are working with obviously the working group, the Harbor working, our users working group, to work on things that improve overall aesthetics and functionality, and things that are speaking to operational and maintenance issues. But the DFO is pretty happy. They've got the main structures there looked after, and everything seems to be working quite well as it is in their eyes and in their function.
They like the fuel dock the way it is?
Sorry?
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, this just needs to be done. At least that seems obvious to me. However, it begs a question, and I'm sure others are curious as well. And I'm not sure that the lease has anything directly to do with this, although I'm not sure about that. The dock where the Werfinger's office is has been blocked off for some time now, which leaves no access to the loading not crane, davit? No. Anyway, that device, for loading and unloading boats. Is there any hope for that being remediated in the near future by any chance, or can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, so some of those piers have been remediated.
Oh, have they?
It can handle a certain load. It hasn't been fully remediated. And I think there's a bit of a process there. So some of it's been opened up, but there's still work to be done.
Thank you. So it's in process. Great. Thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, that brings up the question, having worked with the Harbor Committee, the loading and unloading of on product and gear, is that done on the existing warrant this past season?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Was the loading of prawn boats for product and equipment, was it the use of the current wharf, or were other means used for that process?
I'd have to get some advice from my manager on that one, but I believe that they are operating off their boats at the moment, and they've continued.
I thought they were using a portion of it for that. Was that the resolution?
I think it's available to them now. I'm not sure. I haven't actually seen them because it's just happened. They've just finished it. So I'm not sure they've actually started moving it up onto tables on the act.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's all right.
Would you like to make the motion, Councillor Almeida?
Move that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the Fisheries and Oceans Canada Small Craft Harbors Head Lease Agreement on behalf of the City of Powell River Harbor Authority, and that staff be directed to provide Fisheries and Oceans Canada Small Craft Harbors with a certified copy of this resolution.
Southcott, seconding. Any discussion? Councillor Elliott?
I think I'm in favor of the motion. I'm also in favor of having a bit of a future development plan that we could hopefully get a little bit of partnership dollars from Fisheries and Oceans to modernize a few things. I understand the fuel dock arrangement in that area is a little dangerous and could use some upgrading. Just the way people flow in and out of it, and that includes the commercial people. So I'm just wondering, as we approve this, that we maybe have a process in place for trying to look at that before the next renewal.
And yes, we're very interested in making some of the improvements of which you're referring to. And there is something in the works at the moment that I don't want to present until I get the word, but some good news coming down in that regard. And we'll be potentially reaching out to DFO as well to work with them somewhat on some other aspects.
Thank you.
Any other hands? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. We got to 11.7, the draft 2025 annual report from the Deputy Corporate Officer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the latest version of the annual report is attached in the agenda package. There was notice posted in the Peak for a few weeks that the draft was available for review by the public. We received no feedback from any members of the public, a few revisions from members of council regarding council appointments and liaisons, and then a few stats for building and parks and rec were incorrect. So those were corrected by staff. So if you have any other amendments you'd wish to make today, the report can be adopted as amended, or it can be approved as presented in the package.
I just found one error. Of course, I'm going to look at my own description of me, and I'm not on the Powell River Library Board, and it's Powell River Library Board is in the middle of my paragraph, and then alternative council representative for Council Alameda is at the end, and those two things should go together. Because right now it looks like I'm on the board and I'm not, and then there's a hanging alternative councilor representative. So just linking those two things up. So that would be my one amendment that I caught.
Would somebody like to move the motion so we've got something to amend? Councilor Isaacson?
I move that council approve the City of Powell River 2025 annual report as presented with the amendment for Councilor Isaacson's library board alternate appointment.
Seconded by Councilor Alameda. Any other alterations that anybody has seen that they require? All those in favor of accepting the report as amended? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Well done. Councilor Southcott.
Yeah, thank you. I just really wanted to make the comment. I appreciate this document as a testament to the continuity. In other words, the ball not being dropped during times of great change in our organization. And I really appreciate that. Thank you.
That brings us to a whole new category, unfinished business. And we have an update, the application for intervenor status, corporate officer. Got some good news about that? Sure you have good news. I read the package.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So what this report advises is that shortly after the council resolution on June 4th, the Commission for the Canada Energy Regulator put out a ruling number 3, which provided notice to everybody that the interveners who had applied, the Townside ratepayers, the Cathett Regional District, and the Energy Democracy for BC had been accepted by the Commission and granted intervener status. As well, the Commission set a deadline of June 16th for further intervener applications. Staff, on the advice of legal counsel, expanded the scope of the application that was made, expanded the scope from that which council directed on June the 4th. And so that the advice was to expand the scope of the city's intended application for intervener status to encompass the issues under number 1 of the CER list of issues published for the proceeding. And a copy of our letter to the Commission is attached to the report. It was filed in time, met the deadline. At the same time, I will note that PowerX Corporation also applied within the deadline, and those. So the procedure now is that PREI gets an opportunity to comment on the applications for intervener status by the city and by PowerX, and then I think the deadline for them to do that is
Today and tomorrow, I think, somewhere. I think I looked at that letter. It's today or tomorrow. It's like right around now.
Yeah, it's a short timeline, and then we can respond to that ourselves within a day, I believe it is. So, so the request or the recommendation before you is that council supports the expanded scope of the city's application for intervener status regarding the export license application by PREI.
Councillor Elliott.
First of all, I wanted to say I'm super impressed and happy with the work staff has done on this, and I wanted to thank them for that. And I was prepared to make the motion, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah.
I move that council supports the expanded scope of the city's application for intervener status regarding the export license application by PREI.
By Councillor Southcott. Any discussion?
So to speak briefly to, so what we did is we've done our application, staff found us great legal representation, and we've got great advice. Some of that advice was to expand the scope beyond what our original motion was. That expansion, it really addressed some of the things I was very concerned about, and so I was very happy to see that, and so I'm in favor of this motion.
I add a couple of words myself. I appreciate staff's work on this. We've had some discussion at the beginning of this process about how much work it would take and whether staff had the time or not. And you got it done, did a good job, had the appropriate legal advice, and it looks like going to be able to have an opportunity to speak when they have the public hearings, which it looks like public hearings where we've succeeded in part of the goal to get the public hearings to happen in Powell River. So I want to thank staff for doing that and getting all these tight timelines, because going through these packages, the timelines to reply and to answer submissions are not long. They're within a day, sometimes 2 days. So appreciate what staff has done. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. I just wanted to add those public hearings that Councillor Doubt mentioned are currently scheduled November 16th to 20th, 2026. So I'm sure there will be high public interest in this, and also wanted to appreciate staff for their work on this. And also, I think this demonstrates a rare opportunity where all 3 levels of government are aligned in their general concerns about the future of our community and the energy security held within our resources here. So I'm very excited that as a community we can stand together and express our concerns about this 30-year energy export application. One final note, PowerX was mentioned as also having applied for intervener status. That's a wholly owned subsidiary of BC Hydro that does energy marketing and trading. So to get a sense of who else has applied, The Townsite Ratepayers Society and Energy Democracy for BC and the Cuthbert Regional District have already been accepted as interveners, as well as BC Hydro and Tla'amin Nation. And so now we and PowerX are in the mix. Thank you.
See any other hands? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Another unanimous motion. Thank you, Corporate Officer. Now we have number 13, which is committee recommendations for the Union of BC Municipality Convention, resolutions and meeting requests for cabinet ministers and provincial staff. This came from the committee of the whole previously. Councillor Alameda.
Thank you, Chair. I've spoken to staff, and staff said we can vote on these all together when the time comes, but I do have a couple of amendments to throw out there and hopefully get the support of council. I already shared them with the Deputy Corporate Officer. We'll start off with the third request, which is the Minister of Housing, which I mentioned.
Perhaps, Councillor Alameda, we could start with the motion and then the amendments to the motion.
I guess that would make more sense, wouldn't it, Corporate Officer? Sure. Yeah.
I just like to do them that way.
Sure.
You want to try to sneak in some amendments while you're reading them?
Oh, I thought we could do the motion with as amended, but we can do that too. So I would like to move that council direct staff to request the meeting requests as listed in the agenda package for UBCM.
Is there a seconder
There's
for that?
separate motions, all of them.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Isaacson? Councillor Alameda, you had some amendments?
Yes, I would like to amend the third request, which is towards the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs, and add to that to request funding to aid in the homeless encampment process, including cleanup as a result of a lack of shelter from April 2025 to April 2026.
Seconder for that amendment, Councillor Isaacson. Any discussion? All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Go ahead, Councillor Alameda.
Thank you. I would also like to add an amendment to the fourth request, which is to the Minister of Jobs and Economic Growth. I'll start with a little preamble, if you don't mind. And the mayor couldn't be here today, but he did give me the thumbs up to go ahead with this. Last week, the mayor, myself as his alternate, and CAO Topham received an email from the CEO of the Island Coastal Economic Trust to request the help of local governments as the trust is currently not in the budget plans for funding beyond this current year. And so they've done a great job over the last little while to provide economic growth in the community. A couple of projects in our region are the recently opened Prisma Arts Hub, and Mount Mahoney also benefited greatly from that as well. So the motion I would like to add on the fourth motion there is to add support for the modernization of and strategic investment in the Island Coastal Economic Trust.
Led by Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? Councillor Elliott.
More of a point for clarification. So you're adding a second topic to the one ministerial meeting. I'm wondering if sometimes when you do two topics with a minister at UBCM, they lob onto the one that they most prefer to answer to. and your other topic gets downgraded just by virtue of there being two. And so I worry that there's already a resolution going forward about this that we get to vote on the floor, I believe, is what I read. I worry that this more broader regional concern will overshadow our very important need to focus that minister on the redevelopment of our mill site. And so I just wondered if we might be better off not to have two topics with that minister in that 10, 15-minute speed dating game.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate Councillor Elliott's concern. We often set the tone. They obviously often have pre-written responses in advance, but we provide the opening presentation for the 10 minutes that we have. So if we spend the first minute talking about iced tea and then moving into the bulk of what we're there for, which would be 3, we can kind of set the tone. Our meeting, we can reinforce support for iced tea, but get into the crux of the mill site. So I think both can be true because the conversation, the tone is really set by how we present in that meeting.
Yeah, that is also the case. Sometimes they go away, write a letter though, and then, yeah, okay.
Anybody else want to speak on the amendment? All those in favor of
Chair, just one question,
Councillor Palm?
if I may, through the chair. Councillor Almeida, are you absolutely sure that the trust falls under the Ministry of Jobs and Economic Growth?
It was one of the requests that came directly from the CEO in terms of who to direct it to. That there was jobs and economic growth. There were other 2 that were more rural in nature, but and I did try to look a little bit on the BC government website, but not always easy to find. But it was directly from the trust CEO.
I asked the question because well, I do agree that the mill site is a number 1 priority here when at ministry. We can redirect the trust to another rural component of a ministry that would deal with this. That might be a viable option, not to overwhelm that.
Got a motion on the floor for the amendment, so don't see any other hands up. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? It's carried unanimously. You're doing well so far, Councillor Alameda.
2 for 2 for once. That's all I have. Well, I have a different motion for right after, but not related to this.
Oh, we've done the amendments. Now we need to ask the motion as amended. And just want to say, these are invitations that we're talking about. Meetings at the UBCM and the ministries will look at it, and they may decide to meet with us, and they may decide not to. We've done pretty well as a city in the past of getting the meetings we asked for. So we'll hope and we'll hopefully achieve great things. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Alameda.
Thank you, Chair. Since we are on the topic of the Island Coastal Trust, one other request that came from the CEO was encouraging councils to report back to their MLA. All MLAs are invited and to be a part of the regional committees for the trusts. In the meetings that I've been there over the years covering for the mayor, I think only once between MLA Neal and MLA Simons has our MLA been in attendance at our meeting. So the encouragement suggestion, at least from the trust, was to encourage our MLAs to fight more for the trust. So this motion, which might come on the screen, asks that council direct staff to send a letter to MLA Randy Neal, sharing some of the positive local impact that the Island Coastal Economic Trust has had in our region, most recently the new Prisma Arts Hub and Mount Mahoney Trails, and encourage her to continue to support the strategic investment in the trust in the upcoming budget deliberations.
So, a late item, and we'll see what the rest of the people think. So Councillor Southcott seconds it. Any discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I don't disagree. I wonder if we shouldn't be sending a bit of a briefing to our MLA on all of our issues but maybe that would be more appropriate after we know which ministers we're actually meeting, so that she understands things from our perspective before showing up at the meeting is, I guess, I think that's what you're trying to achieve with that. If a ministerial meeting that we ask for is not given to us, or our request is denied, we maybe don't have a need for that letter. So it might be premature.
Councilor Alameda.
Thank you, Chair. I debated whether to put this on the table today or put it as a notice of motion to our following meeting. The thought process I had there was we could wait on it till July, but then our next meeting is until August. And I figured if we at least move it now, that letter is there for the MLA at some point in the summer. We don't know if we'll get that meeting with the minister. And at least if we don't get that meeting with the minister, we can still voice our concerns with our MLA and hope she continues to fight for this project beyond what we can do.
The motion's on the floor. Nobody objected to it being here. So don't see any other hands up. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Now we are, I think, at 13.2, the wildlife attractant bylaw referred to from the Committee of the Whole, June 2nd, 2026. Would somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Elliott?
I move that council direct staff to engage the public to obtain feedback on the draft wildlife attractant bylaw prior to bringing the proposed bylaw to council for consideration of readings.
Councillor Alameda, any discussion? Do you want to explain the process, Councillor Elliott?
So council did have a lot of us come to committee of the whole, and we've had a lot of discussion. I'm really happy to see that we're starting with some community engagement prior to bringing out first, second, and third reading. I support the process and in favor of the motion.
Other discussion? Councillor Pong?
Just need a little clarification, Chair, and through the chair. When we concluded the discussion at Committee of the Whole on this topic, I remember that the conservation officer, the local fellow, was in the chamber listening intensely. And when we ended the discussion, there was some action that staff was going to get together with that particular individual and bring something back based on knowledge from that entity. I don't see any reference to conservation here, and I don't want to take on their job. They've got a job to do in this town, and it's called Community Wildlife Conservation Act. So why the city is weighing in on this and having public meetings without them at the table and without them involved, I don't quite understand why we're doing and taking on this responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Palm, through the chair. I don't recall there being something that we were going to bring back right away. I think that the idea was to continue to consult with the conservation officer as we work through the process. There's a bit of a difference in terms of the scope of the conservation officer's duties and roles, which are more focused on dangerous wildlife under the Wildfire Act, or sorry, not Wildfire Act, the Wildlife Act. Whereas the intent of our proposed bylaw is to encompass attractants, get away from attractants to all wildlife, as well as, including dangerous wildlife. But I think that there's a lot of different conversations, a lot of different viewpoints from the public and as well as from staff, our own staff. And it will be important as well to have input from the conservation officer, and that is still intended to be part of the process.
Glad to hear he's still in part of the process. Thank you very much.
Councillor Isaacson.
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. From what I recall of our conservation officer's opinions was that his job is made a lot easier by this type of bylaw and having the additional tools to do his work. He finds that the process is collaborative and he's been involved and he likes that, and he's in favor of us having a better bylaw to support this type of work.
Well, the motion that we have is basically to get public input on the proposed bylaw. We're a long way from first, second, and third reading or adoption. So, Councillor Southcott? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the clarity of this proposed bylaw. There's been discussion over many years around the concerns that this bylaw addresses, and I think there's been all sorts of trouble for bylaw enforcement because of far more vague wording. I think is the animal control bylaw, particularly, and I've got a file on bylaw amendments that goes back and proposed and fixing that goes back years. And that's one of the ones that we've spent the most time on. So this really, my impression is that this really answers questions that have been coming up for a long time. So I'm really glad to see this. I'm recognized that the motion is to now engage people or the public to have input. I think the process, it's already been through committee, the whole exhaustive process to get it right, both for bylaw enforcement, but also for the community in general, because there have been lots of concerns over a range of considerations. And yeah, so I really appreciate this and support it. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. So number 14 would be no new business, and we have none. There is no late items to be introduced. We're done with that. Introduction of notices of motion. I'm not aware of any. And now we're down to public clarification, and that's where, subject to the rules of conduct set out in section 11 of the council's procedure bylaw, members of the public may ask questions, clarify items discussed on the during the meeting for maximum of 2 minutes. Oh, any public questions? Mr. Galinsky, you're first.
I thank the acting mayor. Just a couple of quick questions with regard to item 11.6, which is the South Harbor Authority lease. And I'm wondering what financial obligations may be under this lease. That is, does the city have to pay the federal government any money or anything like that in order to enact this?
Answer from the Director of Infrastructure.
There's no change coming in this lease, but the actual amount that passes hands, I'd have to reflect on it again. I don't believe there's an exchange, but I'd have to confirm that.
And one further question, Acting Mayor, does the city keep the revenue from the moorage from that particular facility?
Yes, the revenue that's made goes into the revenue budget as part of the income against the costs.
Appreciate that.
I got that right.
I thank the acting mayor. Those are my questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the public? Anyone online? No questions online. Well, don't see anybody stampeding to the microphone, so we'll call it a day. And some lucky people may be able to get to the second half of the Prisma concert.
Second half of the